Hey there, I'm Stan Stalnaker with Hub Culture, and we're at the online Transition Forum, an incredible event looking at how climate, people, capital, and humanity can scale up for the transition to a cleaner future. Joining me now is Sabrina Krief, who is the professor at the Museum of Natural History in Paris and a primatologist. She's been working for 20 years with chimpanzees in Uganda and is an expert on something that's very timely right now, which is this sort of intersection between wildlife and humanity. Thanks for joining us today, Sabrina.
Thanks for inviting me to be here.
I'd love to have a little conversation with you about your work today. You are an expert in chimpanzees and primates in Africa. You've been working with them for a long time. Can you tell us a little bit about the work that you're doing and what you've learned?
Yeah, I work in Uganda in a national park, and most of the time I'm here in France, but I have a team now working for 20 years in Kibale National Park, and I go there like 3 or 4 times a year. And when I'm here, like now, I'm monitoring the data that my team is collecting. And our work is really to understand how chimpanzees, humans, and forests are surviving together, I will say. Because we are in a place where chimpanzees are staying in a protected area, but all around this national park, there is a lot of agriculture. With monoculture of tea and also crops like maize or banana plantation, which are very attractive for wildlife, especially chimpanzees, but also baboons, elephants. And there is a lot of conflict at this edge of the park and the crops. And so it can be really easily seen because people sometimes put snares, sometimes chimps and elephants come out. And actually disease are something which is not appearing very much when you try to just look at the situation. But when you try to more precisely look at this disease in wildlife, you are very surprised because the goal of the park is to try to keep wildlife protected and human being outside of the park. And actually, microbes such as virus, bacteria, and parasites are crossing very easily both the border between the park and human landscape, but also the species. And especially with chimpanzees, because they are our closest relatives, the diseases are very easily passing from human to chimps and chimps to humans. And there is some other health issue like pollution. And we are also working on this issue of pollution. And what is very incredible is that even in the middle of Uganda, in a national park, when you analyze the hair of chimpanzees that we collect in their nest, you can find some residue of plastics like bisphenol A and bisphenol S. And that's our last research. And I was really very, very surprised to find such compounds in chimpanzees' hair. Means that the pollution has arrived even in the very deep in the forest, even in Africa.
That's amazing. Obviously, currently this year, we're facing a pandemic that is due to COVID-19 and the coronavirus. And the evidence is that this is because the disease has jumped from wildlife to humanity. What can we as a society be doing in terms of the way that we manage this border between wildlife and humanity to try to prevent these diseases from emerging into the human population?
Yeah, some people would have said maybe we have to kill the bats, maybe the pangolins, and maybe other species which are the one who are helping such virus to cross between species. But actually, it is exactly the reverse that we should do: is really protecting the biodiversity, because more species we have, more different place the virus and the microbe will have to be. If we reduce the number of species, the transmission between those species will be increased. And more the species are diverse in terms of genetics. For example, if chimpanzees are inbreeding is very high, so they are more sensitive to such disease. Means that they will be affected and they will be transmitting such disease more easily to other species like human being. And it is the same for pangolins and for bats. If we decrease genetic diversity by poaching, by reducing their habitat like the forest, then we will increase the risk for both wildlife, but also for human beings. So there is a very high interest in preserving this biodiversity, the biodiversity at the level of number of species, but within each species try to preserve the habitat and the quality of the habitat for them to be in good health. So there is this question of protecting the forest. Then there is a question of reducing our impact on biodiversity in terms of agriculture. If we reduce the diversity by monoculture in using a lot of pesticides, insecticides, then again, we increase the risk for human health. And then this diversity is also important in terms of domestic animals. If we breed domestic animals very close to wildlife, and if these animals are also in bad condition, then we increase the risk of disease transmission. So there is several places where we have to be very cautious: the preservation of biodiversity, the reducing of monoculture, so trying to increase agroforestry, for example, and also the transport and the condition in which we maintain these animals, domestic animals, but also wildlife. And so the market where animals are kept alive in small cages, in very bad condition, in very high promiscuity, this is very dangerous for them and for human beings, because they are very stressed, so that they excrete a lot of virus and other microbes, and then the transmission can occur. So what is very urgent is to be very cautious to the way we treat animals.
Yes, I agree completely. Sabrina, one of the works that you've done over the last number of years has been to advocate for the idea that animals or even nature could have legal rights. Could you tell us a little bit more about what that means and why that could be a solution for helping to solve some of these issues around our relationship with nature?
Yeah, I think the case of COVID, but also before, we are now a lot of information of scientific data showing that animals are sensitive, that they have a behavior which are just incredible. I will again take the case of chimpanzees because it's the one I know better, but they have culture, they have a lot of emotions, they are able to communicate. So we should not consider us as apart from other animals. We are also animals, and we have to give them a better place in this world. And for this reason, they are allowed to have freedom and to have an habitat which allows them to live normally without constraints of traveling and with social interaction. So I think it's very important for them, but also for human beings, to find the right place in this world. And the place of human being is not at the top of the hierarchy. They have to be within this network as one special animal, but like butterflies or ants or dogs have also a special place in this world.
Very, very good. I think that creates an imagination of a world where we could all live harmoniously. Sabrina, thank you so much for joining us here at the Transition Forum and wishing you well with your work in Uganda. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.